So I'd say there's a few different things. So what we use, we were just talking about this yesterday, so it's front of mind for me. The tools as well are super useful for investment management. So we use them. We use the tools for sort of diligence, enablement, and support for sure. But also the investment management tool is also really relevant. So because when people come to us and say we want to do an X private equity program, normally they're a bit terrified because it's a bit of a leap into the unknown. Often it's a leap into the unknown. So big career risk for everybody involved, reasonably big numbers, big imperative to get it right, big downside to getting it wrong. And also it has to marry into another portfolio, which is public. So the other thing that the data analytics is really useful for us is to say, okay, let's build you a straw man of what this is going to look like. And let's figure out how it's going to perform, but should perform over a period of time, data-driven, right? So here's the data analytic that actually says this is what's more likely to happen. And we do that all the time. You know, some people in this room remember it well. But that actual comfort factor is a big thing. And then the other thing we can do, which is kind of fun these days, is you can bend it around. You can basically go, give me a 2 deviations left-hand tail world, and what happens? Because obviously I'll worry about going bust, running out of cash. Or equally, if you feel particularly bullish, you can go give me the 2 deviations right-hand tail world, which is everything's going to the moon. And so rolling up all of that into something which basically lets people understand the consequences of taking different choices. So you can play around with, you know, how much do I want to get, rather than setting commitments. I want to have a NAV target. I want this to be 8% of my portfolio in 5 years' time, all things equal. And then you can play around with how do you cut the cake, because obviously the other thing with the cake these days is so many different ways of cutting it. 50 kinds of credit, the world of buyout, venture, growth, real assets, timber, aviation, leasing, you name it. So you can stick it all in and play with it around. You can basically say to people, look, you know, we can do this in a million different ways, but let's just set a base case, meets your needs, satisfies your goals, gives you the sort of return risk that you want, and also that gives you a sort of ability to play around with it so you know what's likely to be the worst and best outcome. Hugely helpful for investment management. Nothing to do with diligence, but hugely helpful for investment management, but uses the same underlying data set. And then on the diligence side, as I said, we use the tools up front to sort of try and focus our efforts as much as we possibly can. And then when we peel it apart from there, I mean, we use more manpower-based analytics as it moves through the process, because we're asking more bespoke questions, and you can't really automate to the same extent. So I mean, we get value bridges out of the system reasonably quickly, and they're reasonably useful. But then when we're doing the sort of track record, turning it on its head, etc., that's all manual labor to try and get to the insights that come out of it. So it's sort of a combination of both.
Chris, on your side, what tools do you use?
Well, what do we use? I mean, on the IR side, it's less interesting. There's lots of stuff that we use for benchmarking and for to help us sort of integrate the different systems that we have internally. I think the big, when I think about what Permira is doing about data and technology tools now, we had our firm offsite last week where everybody gets together, and a big chunk of the agenda was about technology and systems and tools and data. And we have a portfolio group, like lots of people, nothing novel in that, and I'm sure, again, not novel either, but where we are adding to the resource is around our data analytics capability. And that speaks not just to how well we understand what's happening in the portfolio, but how effectively we can drive a range of different value creation initiatives in the portfolio companies themselves. So we have at least 3 working groups going on at the moment around digital customer acquisition, which we've invested a lot in consumer technology, so that's a super valuable initiative. Looking at things like website optimization and customer acquisition. We have a robot process automation work stream that's going on across a number of the different, particularly but not just the business services. We have an advanced analytics team looking at how well we are making sense of the data that we've got in the portfolio. And this is being done top down by people we have in our firm, but also data integration and analytics, and using the resource that we have within the portfolio to help understand the opportunity that's out there for us. We now run a bunch of different conferences through the year around these different themes, getting people from portfolio companies together to share their best practice and insight. And we're just playing with as many different ways to amplify what is good already in the portfolio and make sure we understand the pace of change around technology and data so that we can maximize the benefits of all of that.
Jim, are you seeing the same across your portfolio? I mean, is this the next stage in innovation? I think 10 plus years ago it was all about bringing in operating partners and having good operational capabilities for value creation. Is it now more about data analytics and the use of tech in creating value in companies?
Yeah, it's a bit of an arms race. I think on the portfolio value creation stuff, I mean, one of the challenges of it was, in my opinion anyway, it was actually quite easy 10 years ago to sort of form a point of view on that, because some people had it and some people didn't, and having it deemed to be good and not having it deemed to be not so good. Now everybody's got it. So the problem from the LPs is all of a sudden it's gone into a relative value choice. Who's got a more effective way of doing it? And that's really hard to figure out. So that's become a challenge. And the data analytics bit has sort of popped up as the next thing to have. And so, Permira definitely have it, but, if you look around the market, most funds are trying to do this somehow. And again, they do it for two reasons. One is offense and one is defense. So the offense is, go back to my point of arrival, point of departure, right? This takes 5 years. And the thing that will completely crucify you is if you get the baseline wrong. If you get disrupted in the core assumptions that you thought you were buying, you've got no chance of getting to here. And this technological disruption is what will stop you. So you see funds putting in the data analytics team and the digital team to say, please tell me that I'm not about to make a big mistake. And people have, right? So you look around the market, there's a few different deals that everybody's reasonably well familiar with where the GPs got the baseline wrong, they've been disrupted, and now they're never going to get back to the beginning. They might get back to the beginning. Because they've got two challenges. One is the fundamentals of the business that they bought are different and they're not going to be what they were. The other thing that they've got to deal with is the valuations are radically different. So the multiple that they bought these things for is not where they're going to sell them, unless they can do a massive transformation, which is what they're mostly trying to do. So that's the defense bit, is let's not mess this up. And the offense bit is the opposite, which is let's be the one that messes it up. And there's one classic deal in Europe where actually someone turned defense into offense, but to be unrepeated probably, but nonetheless, that's what they did. Let's buy the disruptor, and let's put the disruptor back into the core business and actually turn it into the disruptor and go from there. So you definitely see that. That's a big thing. So the all sort of digital toolkit, what's the word I'm looking for? The data scientists. I mean, just, data scientist is probably like the thing to be right now if you can be something. Impossible to get them, impossible to keep hold of them, and seem to be everywhere. But that's for sure out there. That's the thing. So the toolkit, I'd say the two things that the toolkits are leaning into are this whole thing and people. Human capital is the other thing that is proving to be one of the hardest things to crack, is the human capital bit. But those two are the things that are probably the most top of mind.